There is a face you cannot forget. It arrives uninvited when you are trying to fall asleep. It surfaces when a song plays that you have not heard in years. It materializes in the silence after someone asks you a question you were not expecting. A question about who you are or what you really want from your life. And in that pause before you answer, before you find the acceptable words, that face appears. The person who hurt you. The one whose actions carved something into your soul that still aches when you press against it. I want to talk to you about that person today. Not in the way you might expect. Not to analyze what they did or to help you build a stronger case against them in the courtroom of your mind. You have done that already. You have rehearsed the closing arguments 1,000 times. You know their crimes by heart. What I want to explore with you is something far stranger, something that might make you uncomfortable at first, that might even feel like a betrayal of everything you have suffered. But if you stay with me, if you let these words find their way past the defenses you have built, I believe something in you will shift. Something that has been locked will finally open. The person who wounded you most deeply was not a random accident of fate. They were not simply bad luck or proof that the universe is cruel. They were a messenger, an unwelcome one, an agonizing one, but a messenger nonetheless, carrying something you desperately needed to see about yourself. Carl Jung spent his entire life studying the hidden architecture of the human psyche. He mapped territories of the soul that most people never visit, not because they cannot, but because they are afraid of what they might find there. And one of his most disturbing discoveries was this. The people who trigger us most intensely, the ones who seem to have a direct line to our deepest wounds, are not attacking us from the outside. They are activating something that was already buried within. There is a part of you that has been waiting to be found, a part that has been exiled into darkness, banished into what Jung called the shadow. And the person who hurt you, whether they knew it or not, became the key that unlocked the door to that basement you have been avoiding your entire life. I remember the first time I truly understood this. I was sitting with the weight of a relationship that had nearly destroyed me. Someone I had trusted completely had revealed themselves to be someone I did not recognize. The betrayal was so profound that I could not make sense of it. How could I have been so blind? How could they have been so cruel? I spent months cycling through anger and grief, building my case, finding new evidence, strengthening my position as the innocent victim. And then I read something that stopped me cold. Jung wrote that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. I put the book down and stared at the wall for a long time, because I realized that my obsession with what they had done to me was preventing me from seeing what they had shown me about myself. You have felt this resistance too. The part of you that is already pulling back, already composing counter-arguments. But I'm not asking you to forgive anyone right now. I am not asking you to let go of your pain or pretend it did not matter. What I am asking is much simpler and much harder. I am asking you to consider the possibility that your deepest wound contains your greatest teacher. Something in you already knows this. That is why you are still here. That is why, despite everything you have tried, you cannot fully move on. Not because you are weak, not because you are holding a grudge, but because there is unfinished business in your soul. There is something that person came to deliver, and you have not yet received it. The wound goes deeper than you want to admit. It predates the person you are thinking of right now. That is the first thing you need to understand, the first piece of the puzzle that changes everything. The person who hurt you did not create your wound. They found it. They walked straight toward it as if guided by some invisible force, and they pressed directly on the spot that was already tender. The spot that had been tender long before you ever met them. I have seen this pattern unfold so many times that I have stopped believing in coincidences. A woman tells me about her abusive partner, and as she describes the specific ways he diminished her, she begins to hear echoes of her father's voice. A man recounts how his business partner cheated him, and midway through the story he stops speaking, because he has just remembered something his older brother did when they were children, something he had convinced himself he had forgotten. The new wound reopens the old wound. That is its function. That is why it hurts so disproportionately to what actually happened. You are not just experiencing the pain of this moment. You are experiencing the accumulated pain of every moment that came before, every moment that got stored in your body because you did not have the words or the safety to process it at the time. There is a reason you attracted this particular person into your life. I know that is a difficult statement. I know it sounds like I am blaming you for what happened, and I want to be absolutely clear that I am not. What was done to you was wrong. The pain you experienced was real. The person who hurt you is responsible for their actions, but something in you was calling out for a certain kind of experience. Something in your unconscious was seeking the precise medicine it needed, and that medicine came disguised as poison. Jung called this the complex, not complicated in the way we use the word casually. A complex is a cluster of emotions and memories and associations that forms around a core wound. It lives in the unconscious, and it exerts a gravitational pull on your life. It draws toward you the situations and people that resonate with its frequency. Not because you want to suffer, not because you are broken, but because there is something in you that knows suffering unexamined never transforms. It only repeats. The person who hurt you matched your complex. They fit into it like a key into a lock. That is why the connection felt so powerful at first, whether it was romantic or familial or professional. Something in you recognized something in them before your conscious mind had time to evaluate the situation. Your body knew. Your unconscious knew. Some part of you whispered yes before you even understood what you were agreeing to. I spoke with a man once who had been financially devastated by a mentor he idolized. This man had given years of his life to someone who ultimately used him and discarded him. When we talked about his childhood, he told me about his father, a charming man who would make grand promises he never kept. A man who would shower him with attention and then disappear for months. The mentor was his father wearing a different face. The same wound, the same betrayal, played out on a larger stage. When he finally saw the connection, something shifted in his chest. He told me it felt like a locked door opening, like stepping into a room in his own house that he had never entered. The anger was still there, but now there was something else too. Curiosity. A terrible kind of clarity. That clarity is what I want for you, not because it will erase your pain, but because it will give your pain a purpose. Right now, your wound feels meaningless, random, cruel, like evidence that life is unfair and people cannot be trusted. But what if your wound is actually trying to teach you something? What if the person who hurt you is carrying a message you have been refusing to receive your entire life? The shadow is Jung's term for everything you have rejected about yourself. Everything you were taught was unacceptable. Everything you pushed down and away because it did not fit the image of who you thought you needed to be. When you were young, you learned very quickly which parts of you were welcomed and which parts were not. You learned which emotions were safe to express and which ones had to be hidden. You learned which aspects of your personality would be rewarded and which would be punished. And, like any intelligent creature, you adapted. You became who you needed to become in order to survive, in order to be loved, in order to belong. But the parts you rejected did not disappear. They were exiled into the basement of your psyche, and they have been living there ever since, growing stronger in the dark, waiting, Jung said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is one of the most important sentences I have ever read, because it means that the pattern that keeps repeating in your life, the same type of person hurting you in the same type of way, is not fate. It is not bad luck. It is the unconscious trying to become conscious. It is your shadow demanding to be seen. The person who hurt you carries a piece of your shadow. That is the real reason they affect you so deeply. That is why you cannot just move on no matter how hard you try. They are not simply an external problem to be solved. They are a mirror reflecting something you have been unwilling to face in yourself. I want to be very careful here because this is where people get confused and start to misuse these ideas. I am not saying that you secretly wanted to be hurt. I am not saying that the cruelty done to you was somehow your own cruelty reflected back. The shadow is subtler than that. Maybe the person who hurt you was ruthless, and your shadow is the part of you that is terrified to claim your own power because you associate power with destruction. Maybe they were cold and emotionally unavailable, and your shadow is the part of you that desperately needs connection, but pretends not to because needing anything feels too vulnerable. Maybe they were dishonest, and your shadow is the part of you that has been lying to yourself about what you really want from your life. The shadow is not always dark in the way we think of darkness. Sometimes it contains your light. Sometimes the thing you have most deeply repressed is your own brilliance, your own creativity, your own capacity for joy. Sometimes the person who hurt you was actually triggering your jealousy of something they possessed that you have never allowed yourself to claim. There was a woman I knew years ago who spent a decade hating her sister. The sister was glamorous and confident, and seemed to move through the world without effort, while this woman struggled and doubted herself constantly. Their relationship was poisonous. Every interaction left wounds. When she finally did the deep work of examining what her sister activated in her, she discovered something shocking. It was not that her sister was bad. It was that her sister represented everything this woman had been told was not allowed for her. Beauty, confidence, desire, taking up space. Her sister was living the life her shadow wanted, and her hatred was actually a displaced longing, a grief for the parts of herself she had murdered to be acceptable. This is the revelation that changes everything. The person who hurt you is not the source of your pain. They are the revealer of it. They showed you where you were already wounded. They illuminated the exact territory in your psyche that needs healing. Jung wrote that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. He was not speaking metaphorically. He was describing a practical process that every human being must undergo if they want to stop repeating the same patterns, if they want to finally be free. The darkness in your life, the pain you have experienced, the person who devastated you, these are not obstacles to your growth. They are the very material of your growth. They are showing you exactly where the work needs to be done. I remember when this finally landed in my own life, when I stopped seeing my deepest wound as something that had been done to me and started seeing it as something that had been revealed to me. The shift was like removing a pair of distorted glasses I had been wearing so long I forgot they were there. Suddenly, the same memories looked different. The same pain pointed somewhere new. I understood that I had been hypnotized by the external drama. Who did what to whom? Who was right and who was wrong? The endless loop of accusation and defense that plays in the mind of anyone who has been deeply hurt. And that loop, as righteous as it felt, was keeping me locked in place. It was preventing me from receiving the message my wound was trying to deliver. The message is always about you, not about them. They played their role, and their role was real, but the message is about something in you that is ready to transform. Perhaps you are recognizing something right now. Perhaps you are beginning to see the outline of a pattern you have been living inside without ever naming it. I want you to pay attention to what is happening in your body as you read these words, because your body knows before your mind admits it. Your body has been carrying this truth for a long time. Maybe for you the pattern looks like this. You keep finding yourself in relationships with people who make you feel small, who somehow always manage to position themselves as the important one while you fade into the background. And every time it happens, you tell yourself that next time will be different. Next time you will choose better. But you do not choose differently because the wound is not about them. The wound is about a part of you that believes you do not deserve to take up space, that learned long ago to make yourself invisible to survive. Or maybe your pattern is different. Maybe you keep being betrayed by people you trust completely. Friends who turn on you, partners who lie, colleagues who take credit for your work. And you have developed a story about this. People cannot be trusted. You have to protect yourself. The world is full of takers. But beneath that story is a wound that is much older, a wound about your own value, a wound that keeps setting up scenarios where your worthlessness gets confirmed because part of you still believes you're not worth being loyal to. Perhaps the pattern shows up in your family. The same argument with a parent that you have been having for 30 years. The same dynamic with a sibling that flares up every holiday. You know the script by heart at this point. You could play both parts. And yet it keeps happening because neither of you can see what is really being enacted. The wound beneath the wound. The original injury that keeps seeking resolution through repetition. There is also a pattern that shows up when you are alone, at night, in those moments when there is nothing to distract you from yourself. The person who hurt you arrives in those silences. Their face, their words. The scene plays again, and you wonder why you cannot let it go, why your mind keeps returning to the crime scene like a detective who missed something. Your mind keeps returning because you did miss something. You missed what that person came to show you about yourself. And until you receive that message, until you let the wound speak its truth, you will keep replaying the scene, not out of weakness, out of necessity. Because your soul refuses to let you move forward while leaving essential parts of yourself behind. If you are recognizing yourself in what I am describing, I want you to write one word in the comments. Write the word awakening. Not for me, not for anyone else who might read it. For yourself. As a marker that today something shifted. That today you began to see your wound differently. But here's what most people never learn. There is what happens next. There is what you do with this recognition once it arrives. Because seeing the pattern is only the beginning. The real work is in what comes after. The transformation you are seeking does not happen through understanding alone. It happens through a different kind of engagement with your wound. A kind of engagement that most people never attempt because no one teaches them how. The first shift happens when you stop asking, why did they do this to me? And start asking, what is this revealing about what I have rejected in myself? This is not about excusing their behavior. Let me say that again, because it is easy to mishear. You are not letting them off the hook. You are simply redirecting your attention from their psychology to your own. Because their psychology is their business. Yours is the only one you can actually change. There was an ancient Greek concept called metanoia. It is usually translated as repentance, but that misses something essential. Metanoia literally means a change of mind, a turning around. It is the moment when you stop looking outward and turn to face what is within. This is what your wound is inviting you to do, to turn around, to stop running from what has been chasing you, to finally meet the part of yourself that the other person's behavior activated. When you make this turn, something remarkable happens. the charge begins to dissipate. Not immediately, not completely, but the obsessive quality of your pain, the way it hijacks your thoughts, the way it intrudes when you are trying to focus on something else, all of that begins to soften. Because you are no longer feeding the pattern. You are no longer pouring your energy into the external drama. You are reclaiming that energy and redirecting it toward the only person you can actually heal. The second shift is learning to dialogue with the wounded part of you. Jung developed a practice he called active imagination. It is not visualization in the shallow sense. It is a genuine encounter with the figures that live in your unconscious. You approach your wound not as a problem to be solved, but as a presence to be met. You ask questions. You listen for responses. You treat it as a living entity with its own intelligence, its own history, its own needs. This might sound strange if you have never tried it. It sounded strange to me when I first encountered the idea. But I can tell you from direct experience that the parts of you that have been exiled into darkness are waiting to be contacted. They have been waiting for a very long time. And when you finally turn toward them with genuine curiosity, instead of fear or shame, they begin to speak. They begin to tell you what they need. The part of you that the hurtful person activated, that wounded aspect that has been running your life from the basement, it does not want to hurt you. It wants to be integrated. It wants to come home. It wants to be recognized as a legitimate part of who you are, instead of something to be hidden or overcome. Jung said, "I would rather be whole than good." This statement contains the entire teaching. Being good, in the way we usually mean it, requires amputating the parts of ourselves that do not fit the image. It requires maintaining a false self, a persona, that performs acceptability while the real self suffocates in the dark. Wholeness is different. Wholeness means gathering all the scattered pieces, including the ones that scare you, including the ones that were exiled because someone told you they were unacceptable. The third shift is recognizing that forgiveness is not about them. This is perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of the entire healing process. People think forgiveness means telling the person who hurt them that what they did was okay. It means nothing of the kind. Forgiveness is the moment you stop carrying their poison in your body. It is the moment you set down the weight you have been dragging from room to room, year to year, relationship to relationship. It is not a gift you give to them. It is a gift you give to yourself. But here's what no one tells you about forgiveness. You cannot force it. You cannot decide to forgive and then feel forgiven. Forgiveness is a byproduct. It emerges naturally when you have done the other work. When you have received the message your wound was carrying. When you have reclaimed the shadow material the other person was holding up as a mirror. When you have integrated what was split off. After all that, forgiveness is not an effort. It is an exhalation. You simply find one day that the charge is gone. You can think of them without your stomach tightening. You can speak their name without your heart rate increasing, not because you have achieved some spiritual accomplishment, but because the wound has completed its work. It taught you what it came to teach, and now it can finally close. If this is resonating with you, if you are finding words for something you have carried in silence, I want to ask you to share this with someone who needs it. Not for my sake, for theirs. You probably know exactly who I mean. Someone who has been stuck in the same wound for too long. Someone who needs to hear that their pain might be trying to show them something. Send them this. Let it find its way to them. The fourth shift is the hardest and the most liberating. It is accepting that you needed exactly what happened to you. Not wanted, needed. There's a vast difference. I know how this sounds. I know that part of you is already objecting, already marshaling evidence about how much damage was done, how many years were lost, how much you have suffered. I am not dismissing any of that. The suffering was real. The damage was real. The years cannot be recovered. But your soul is playing a longer game than your personality can understand. Your soul is not interested in comfort. It is interested in growth. It is interested in becoming whole. And sometimes the path to wholeness runs directly through devastation. There is a phase in alchemy that the old philosophers called the nigredo, the blackening. It is the stage where everything is reduced to ash, where the old forms are completely destroyed. It looks like failure. It feels like death. And from within the experience, there is no way to see that it is preparation for something new. The breakdown must precede the breakthrough. The destruction of the old self must precede the birth of the new one. The person who hurt you initiated your nigredo. They catalyzed the death of something in you that needed to die. Not your value, not your worthiness, but the false structures you had built to protect yourself from a wound you were not yet ready to face. I have seen this pattern in my own life. The relationship that broke me open was the same relationship that forced me to stop hiding from parts of myself I had spent decades avoiding. Would I have chosen that path voluntarily? Absolutely not. The pain was too great. The cost was too high. But looking back, I cannot imagine who I would be if that devastation had not occurred. I cannot imagine having access to the depths I now inhabit if I had not been forced to journey through the darkness. Your nervous system needs to hear something important right now. You survived. Whatever happened, you survived it. You are here. You are reading these words. You are capable of understanding what they mean. That survival is not nothing. That survival is evidence that something in you is stronger than what tried to break you. And the part of you that survived is the same part that can integrate what happened. The same part that can receive the teaching. The same part that can transform the wound into wisdom. There is a moment coming in your life. It may be soon. It may be years away. But there is a moment coming when you will look back at the person who hurt you, and you will feel something unexpected. Not anger, not grief, not even forgiveness, exactly. Something more like gratitude. Not gratitude for the pain. Never that. But gratitude for what the pain made possible. Gratitude for who you became because of what you survived. Gratitude for the depths you discovered within yourself that you never would have accessed on the easy path. I have sat with people who have reached this moment. I have seen the look in their eyes when it arrives. There is a quality of stillness that comes, a quality of completion, as if something that had been fighting for resolution for many years has finally come to rest. A woman I spoke with had been abused by her stepfather throughout her childhood. The trauma shaped everything in her life. Her relationships, her self-worth, her capacity to trust. She spent years in therapy, years doing the painstaking work of reclaiming what had been taken from her. And then one day she told me something I will never forget. She said that without what happened, she would not have become who she is. She would not have the depth of compassion she carries. She would not have the ability to sit with others in their darkest moments without flinching. She would not have found her calling as a healer. The very thing that tried to destroy her became the foundation of her gift. She was not excusing what was done. She was not saying it was okay. She was saying something far more radical. She was saying that her soul had metabolized the poison and transformed it into medicine. She was saying that the wound had become a womb. This is the vision I hold for you. Not a future where the pain never happened. Not a fantasy of a life without suffering, but a future where the suffering has been alchemized. Where the darkness has become the source of your light. Where the person who hurt you most deeply has unwittingly become the catalyst for your most profound awakening. Jung wrote that the meeting with oneself is at first the meeting with one's own shadow. What he meant was that the journey toward wholeness always begins in the dark. It begins with the parts of ourselves we have rejected. It begins with the wounds we have been avoiding. There is no other entry point. The door to your deepest self opens only when you are willing to descend. The person who hurt you pushed you toward that door. They did not do it kindly. They did not do it with your best interest at heart. They may have done it with cruelty and calculation, but the result's the same. You now stand at the threshold of a passage most people never find. What you do next is up to you. You can turn away. You can go back to the surface. You can continue rehearsing the old story of what they did and how it damaged you. That story will never exhaust itself. There will always be more evidence to gather, more grievances to catalog, more proof that you were the victim. Or you can step through the door. You can use the pain as your map. You can descend into your own underworld and find what is waiting for you there, the parts of yourself that were exiled, the power that was taken from you, the truth about who you really are beneath the story you have been telling. The descent is not easy. I would be lying if I said otherwise. There are no shortcuts through the shadow. There is no bypass around the pain. You have to go through it to get to the other side. But on the other side, there is something that makes the journey worthwhile. There is a version of you that has integrated what was split off. A version of you that no longer gives your power away. A version of you that carries the wound as a badge of initiation rather than a mark of damage. You will be sitting somewhere ordinary one day. A kitchen table. A park bench. The seat of your car in a parking lot. And you will feel something you have not felt in a very long time. Not happiness in the superficial sense. Something quieter and more sustainable. A sense that you are finally living from your own center. That the person you are presenting to the world is the same as the person who lives inside. That the war between your different selves has ended. In that moment, you will think of them. The person who hurt you, and you will realize that you have not thought of them in weeks, maybe months. The obsessive quality will be gone. The charge will have dissipated. They will simply be a character from an earlier chapter of your story. Someone who played an important role and then exited the stage. And you will understand then what I am telling you now. That they were never the point. That they were always pointing beyond themselves to something in you that needed to be found. That your suffering was never meaningless, even when it felt like the most meaningless thing in the world. Jung said that in the end, it is not the years in your life that count, but the life in your years. The life in your years comes from integration, from wholeness, from the courage to face everything you have been running from and discover that it was never your enemy. It was your teacher in disguise. Remember where we started. That face you cannot forget. That scene that plays on repeat at 2 a.m. That person whose actions carved something into your soul. They have not gone away, but something has changed in the space between you and them. A space that used to be filled entirely with pain is now making room for something else. Understanding, possibility. The first glimmers of a transformation that you did not know was available to you when you began reading these words. I want you to hold that image one more time. The face. The wound. And now I want you to add something to the picture. I want you to see that person as a messenger, an unwilling one, an unconscious one, but a messenger nonetheless, carrying exactly what you needed to see about yourself, offering exactly the catalyst your soul was calling for. This does not redeem what they did. It does not make it okay, but it does something more important. It gives you a way to use it. It gives your suffering a direction. It gives your pain a function. The person who hurt you the most was sent to awaken something inside you. Whether you believe in a universe with that kind of intelligence, or whether you see it as the strange logic of the psyche seeking its own healing, the result is the same. Your wound is your initiation. Your pain is your portal. The thing that nearly destroyed you is the same thing that can finally set you free. If you have stayed with me until now, something in you is ready. Ready to stop running. Ready to stop rehearsing the same story. Ready to receive what your suffering has been trying to give you all along. Write these words in the comments. I am ready to receive what my wound came to teach me. Not as a wish. Not as something you hope might happen someday. As a declaration. As the first words of a new chapter in your life. And then close your eyes for a moment. Take a breath. Feel the weight of what you have been carrying. And then very gently begin to set it down. You do not have to carry this alone anymore. You never did. The teacher was always inside you. The healing was always possible. You just needed someone to point toward the door. I have pointed. The rest is up to you. And I believe, more than you might believe about yourself right now, that you are ready to walk through.